I just remember getting that call and falling to the floor in my office and just sobbing.
The first thing I saw was my son laying on the floor.
You don't believe it. You don't want to believe it. You're in denial.
I just wanted to hold my son.
It was the worst moment of our lives.
Chris was my best friend.
I lost Josh a year ago.
I lost my son, Nathan.
My son, Keaton, was 25 years old.
He was 38.
He was 40 years old.
She was 26 years old.
Lily was 20 years old when she died of fentanyl poisoning.
He died of fentanyl poisoning.
Fentanyl poisoning, heroin overdose laced with fentanyl, I should say.
He died of chronic alcohol abuse.
He died of alcoholism.
A heroin overdose.
The grief of losing your only beautiful, talented, creative granddaughter is with me every day.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Dustin Lukey. The numbers can be discouraging. Overdose deaths are increasing. In the last 5 years in Crosse County, there have been more than 140 overdose deaths, with nearly 100 of them involving fentanyl. In 2021, the Crosse County Medical Examiner reported 31 overdose deaths, which followed a record 40 in 2020. In both years, nearly half involving fentanyl. But each of those numbers represents a person, a name, a face, a family member, a friend. And tonight we will hear from friends and family members who have lost a loved one to an overdose. We hope to bring awareness to this issue, shed some light on the stigma, and find some resolutions to try to bring an end to this crisis.
He and his girlfriend from high school had broken up, and someone offered him a pill and said, "Here, this will help."
He told me as an adult that he started smoking pot at age 12. And I'm like, okay, where was I? You know.
I kind of thought, but I think I was more in denial than anything.
She went from marijuana to harder drugs.
He decided to take a backpack full of marijuana into a concert for his buddy and ended up in prison after that.
We found out later that she started huffing compressed air. So it's the spray that you use to clean your keyboard with for your computer. They say that, you know, if you huff 1 or 2 times, it could just go straight to your brain and you die. And they couldn't believe she lived through over a year of doing that.
And we kept warning her and trying to, you know, get her into treatment and get her out of that life.
He had struggled with it since he was a teenager.
I was not aware of the extent of his struggle with depression and anxiety. He medicated with alcohol.
I watched his alcoholism just get worse and worse and worse. You know, I had no experience with it at that time. So I just thought, oh, you know, he just drinks too much.
Ended up having a traumatic injury due to alcohol over the limit, and ended up on having surgery and got addicted to pain pills after that.
And Nate's mind and body were so deteriorated that he could not comprehend how he could function without alcohol.
He told me he wasn't afraid to die. And I just said, you know, don't say that.
Saturday morning, I drove down to Madison to check on her. Got in the house and she was laying on her bed. I went up in there and she had passed from huffing. There was about 5 or 6 of those compressed air cans on the side of her bed.
2 days after this picture was taken, I got the call in the car from my daughter, you know, just come home, Mom.
When I got the phone call from his fiance telling me something was wrong with Dustin, I couldn't understand her. So we raced down to the hotel that they were at.
You see all the police cars, you see all the cars in your driveway, and
So I pulled up and ran out and ran into their apartment
and he's gone. He didn't want to die.
We'd say, we're afraid we're going to lose you, and she'd say, I'm not going anywhere. She was very strong-willed, and she really didn't believe it was going to kill her.
She, used again, and she got drugs that were laced with fentanyl, and she died from the fentanyl poisoning.
Ended up dying of a fentanyl overdose.
we found out from the autopsy that he had pure fentanyl in his system.
He thought it was heroin, but it was fentanyl.
He thought it was cocaine. They didn't find a trace of cocaine in his system. It was all fentanyl.
And he and his significant other both passed.
He was poisoned. Somebody put fentanyl in his heroin.
Yeah, we've definitely seen an increase. It's been difficult couple of years. COVID hit, and then we've seen the influx of fentanyl into the community, and so those have really affected the numbers in a negative way.
It's my understanding that that weekend, I believe there were 10 total overdoses that weekend in La Crosse area, and my son just happened to be one of them.
This group meets here at the Cooley Recovery Center to try to help them through the grieving process. Of course, one of the hardest parts, they say, is dealing with the stigma and judgment that comes along with an overdose.
It was so hard. I felt so much guilt because I felt that I didn't do enough for her. It's so could've, would've, should've.
The stigma needs to be erased.
I'm sure I was probably even one of those people that said, that they're on drugs, whatever, they're wasting their life. But who truly decides to try a drug knowing they're going to get addicted and possibly die one day?
But yeah, when it comes to family though too, there's so much shame and stigma, and so reaching out to people that are going through it as well is super important, because you just don't have anybody else to talk to.
The other part that is so difficult is the stigma and the judgment that you encounter from people.
I would hear comments from people, about, oh, here he is again, here he's back again. I get it, but when you hear that kind of stuff, it's a disease.
It's not a moral failure on the part of an individual suffering with the illness, but rather something that they need help with.
We tried to get her into treatment again, and she said, I'm just trying to numb the pain.
Physical pain, psychological pain, trauma, all of these things drive one towards substances to escape some things that are in their control, but many things that may not be in their control.
All addictions are, that's a disease. It's something she couldn't really control.
He struggled so bad, and he wanted to fight it so hard, but it just had a hold on him, and he just couldn't fight it. And he tried. He really tried, and he couldn't help it any more than anybody else that has a sickness.
I feel like a lot of people try to dodge the subject, and it's not helping.
People seem to forget, and they don't talk about her. They don't even talk about what happened. And all I want sometimes is for my family and for other friends just to say, hey, you must be missing Lily, but they don't.
It's frustrating when, people are scared to talk to you. They're scared to bring up their name because they're scared of what pain you're going to have.
And it's because they're afraid they're going to hurt us. And yeah, the grief is with us all the time. It's never going to go away. It's going to be with us for the rest of our life. There's a void there. There's an emptiness. And I just want people to say, her name at times. Just, you know.
I want to hear his name. I want to keep him alive.
Dustin is his name. It will always be Dustin. And talk to me about him.
Don't be afraid to talk about our kid. We want to hear their name. We want to be asked about them. Yeah, don't tread lightly around any of us who have lost our child, because we want to hear their name and keep them with us.
It's not pain, it's joy, because somebody remembers.
Now we'd like to take a moment to discuss the types of resources this group feels would help people facing a similar situation.
He just never got the help that he needed, to be honest. He just, I think he just didn't want to believe that he had a problem.
She was ready to seek out treatment. In fact, she had found a doctor and someone that she felt comfortable with and someone that she really wanted to work with. And she called to make an appointment and was told she couldn't get an appointment for several days.
He just deteriorated every single year. He started going into the hospital for pancreatitis, and in and out, in and out, in and out. He went to rehab a few times, but it just never sunk in.
He did not have the right kind of care. The rehabilitation did not meet his needs. He had to do the 12-step program. I know that did not meet his needs.
We need more resources for people. We need to stop throwing people into the system without getting them help. Throwing them in jail is not doing them any good.
There needs to be more help out there for these people that are struggling mentally, emotionally.
The problem is so substantial. The breadth and depth of the problem is so vast that you have to chip away at it at different points where you can.
She went through treatment at, she had a halfway house through Gunderson, and that was really what she needed. And at the end of that, insurance cut her off after about 3 weeks, which she could have used longer.
How does that get paid for? How does an individual actually engage in that treatment such that it can be sustainable for the providers of those treatment to keep providing that treatment?
And I think we need more mental help in our area as well, because I think that has a lot to do with it. I think there's so many people that that's their way of coping. And I think that's what my son, that was his way of coping.
We need to increase our behavioral health resources. We need to increase reimbursement for those services, so we have them. We need to increase schooling for counselors and people to get into the fields so they want to do this work. That's important. We need to increase funding for treatment centers, residential, outpatient. So the whole gamut of treatment has to be done, and then you also have to make sure that we have medication-assisted treatment readily available for patients.
And there's so many options he could have had, and he just thought he had none. He didn't get the right help.
We have to, as a society, be willing to embrace and understand human suffering.
I always tried to give him hope, but it's not enough. I mean, it's the mental health along with the drug usage. So they go hand in hand.
That you always have the what ifs. Maybe I could have done something differently as he was growing up. And he's always in my mind. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about him.
keep the conversation open amongst your loved ones too, so they are willing to talk about it. That's important, because you might be surprised who's struggling with mental health or addiction. You don't even know, and if you don't have that conversation going, you're never going to find out.
The first step is asking for help, and practicing asking for help is very important. If you go with somebody you trust first, a family member, friend, doctor, but we are here at Cooley Recovery Center to.
So I want parents to know to be really watchful over what's in the house, and talk to your kids about that. Seek out help.
If people out there are suffering from drug addiction or any kind of mental health issues, do not be afraid to talk to people, especially your family. Because we may get upset knowing that this is what you're doing, but I'd give anything to have my son come up to me and say, "Mom, I need this to go away, and I need help to get this under control." And I want, we had, like I said, when he died, we had a wedding. We were supposed to have a wedding that year. Instead, we ended up having a funeral, and just people you need to have that, even if it's just one person to go that they can talk to.
When an individual says, "It's my day today to stop, to quit, to break this cycle," and that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? So the individual wants to break free from a cycle of this addiction, and this biological urge now that's taken hold of them. That's just the beginning. So how do they, what is that pathway? What is that route? What is that entry point? And then once they're in that entry point, what are the myriad of options one has to complete that journey and that cycle? And if they fall out of it, how can they get back into it and try again?
This is not an easy disease to conquer. There's a lot of step forwards and then 2 steps back. If you talk to those that have gone through it, it's really a journey. And to support them throughout the whole journey is what we have to do as a community.
And I think that's something we are working on, but it isn't wholly connected as one thing. I think it's disjointed. We have various health systems in the area. We have county partners. We have our state partners, federal partners. But I do think that answering that question when someone says, "It's my day to receive help today," when they hit that personal rock bottom, whatever it may be, what is it that we can do for them and help show them the way?
Just not being alone, having some support, knowing that you're not the only person that has gone down this path before, and that it's possible to find recovery. The hope, we need hope. That's really, hope can be a drug, and you know what I mean? It's because it's one of those things where it's once you start to realize that it's possible for you, then you end up working harder for it.
No one just has 0 problems in their life and just wakes up one day and says, "I'm going to start doing IV drugs." I mean, that's not how it works. This is a steady cascade of events in someone's life that eventually leads them there. And so we have to look at where we can intervene all along that path and then get them back on a different path. And that's the goal. Just getting into treatment, knowing it's there, and we do have treatment that works. We've got good therapy and more coming all the time. I think that is one thing that the opiate epidemic has really brought to the surface is we need more research. We need to study this more. And the brain is kind of the final frontier in medicine, right? Really getting to understand some of these addiction processes. And we're getting there, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
All I know is that love continues. And, death can't even take that away. Death can't take your love away. You still love them, and they still love you.
We'd like to express our sincere thank you to the members of this group who shared their stories and the experts with whom we spoke. If you or someone you know is struggling, please know that there are resources available. I'm Dustin Lukey. Thank you for watching.